I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Jamie Mulkey, Caveon's Vice President of Test Development. Jamie?
Good morning.
Take it
Hello,
away.
everyone. Thank you. Our session today is called the Examnivore Dilemma. When does it make sense to outsource test development talent? And the objectives for this session today are really to share some best practices among the test development community, provide some examples of new test development processes, and really give you, as test development managers, just some ideas that you might not have thought of before in terms of your test development processes. Now, before we get started, I thought I'd do a little quick poll before we kind of define what an Examnivore is. How many of you know what a locavore is? Skylar, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and do a quick poll if you can answer the question here. And Skylar, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so we've launched a poll here, and that says, do you know what a locavore is? The selections are a new kind of locomotive, someone who buys products and services locally, a medical instrument that helps you locate sources of fat, and finally, someone who eats only fruits, vegetables, and herbs. So we're going to wait for maybe another 15 seconds. It looks like about 65–70% of our attendees have voted. Give about 10 more, maybe 5 more seconds. If you haven't voted, please click one. Okay, I think we're there. I'm going to close the poll now, Jamie.
Okay.
I'm going to share the results. And 90% of them chose someone who buys products and services locally.
Great. So most of you do know the definition. A couple of these distractors weren't very distracting, just more tongue-in-cheek. But so we kind of know what a locavore is, but let's go to the next slide and talk about what an examnivore is. These are individuals who source test development talent and psychometric talent to support their testing program. They know which pieces of the exam development process to keep in-house versus to outsource. They understand the security risks with sending out work and know how to mitigate them. And they're also good at looking at the test development forecast so that they can plan out their resources accordingly and make sure that they've got enough resources for the exams that they need to develop. Let's go to the next slide. You know, we know today that more and more is being asked of the examnivore. There's a greater need for assessments. There's a push to innovate. We want, you know, examnivores need to be thinking about new and different item formats. They also want to be thinking about protecting their intellectual property. What can they do to keep their exams and their items more secure? Department accountability is important because many times these examnivores have to be accountable to the larger organization. And lastly, their outcomes as a testing program have to be measurable. So they need to be able to see the results of their testing program and make sure that they're contributing to the larger organization. With us today are two distinguished guests, Liz Burns and Karen Petrini. Liz is with Juniper Networks as the Senior Certification Exam Manager, and Karen is the Manager of Exam Management, New Product Development, and Lifecycle Management. Quite a title. So welcome, Liz and Karen.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you.
Hi. What we thought we would do today is ask these managers of exam, very experienced managers of exam development, a couple of questions about outsourcing versus what they do internally. So let's go to our first question. I'd like to ask, why don't we start with Liz? What tasks do you develop externally versus outsource? I'm sorry, what tasks do you internally versus outsource? Sorry.
Externally? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. We at Juniper Networks, we basically do everything internally, except for the skill sets that you know, might not be a key component or a key strategy for for our organization. So we outsource psychometrics and then the test publishing and test delivery. So for exam development workshops, my team, recruit the SMEs and project manage the process and then the development of the exams through the publication of them to our test delivery provider. We also internally do the initial review of our live exams for potential performance issues, so looking for really high-low pass rates, easy, hard questions, etc., to determine if some additional analysis needs to be done on those exams. But the actual analysis and psychometrics we outsource because they require a certain expertise that I choose not to develop within my team. So the workshop facilitation and psychometric analysis, we have a consultant that helps us with doing that, including the form setting and the cut score setting. And then we outsource the exam publication and the exam delivery to one of the global exam delivery partners.
Okay, great. So psychometrics is kind of one of the key things that you do outsource. Karen, how about you? What are some things that you do internally versus externally outsource?
Well, at HP, we do a little bit differently than what Liz is describing they do at Juniper. I will start by saying, though, that the overall management of our exam design process from end to end is done internally. We do have exam managers that really oversee that entire process to make sure that all the pieces of the parts are coming together and, that they're meeting all of our different requirements. As far as what we keep strictly internal, our competency modeling process and blueprinting is done internally. We also conduct all of our technical reviews of the exams, regardless of how they were developed initially. That is done through an internal process. And we also do keep our cut score setting process in-house. My team is trained on the basics of psychometrics and how to conduct the ANGOF process, and so they are responsible and they manage that from end to end. As far as our exam development of the questions, we do have kind of a mixed approach here depending on the type of exam that we're developing. We may outsource the initial development of those test questions, but we also might keep that in-house through an item development workshop, depending on whether it's a high-stakes exam or whether it isn't. As far as just strictly external outsourced tasks, I will say that all of our editing, we typically do 2 rounds of edits and a basic psychometric review to start with before they even go through a tech review. Round 1 occurs. We do outsource that. And anything that I would consider that we need heavy psychometric involvement with. For example, we developed a board review exam last year, and this took quite a bit of psychometric involvement, as you can imagine, and so that was something that we contracted with and worked hand in hand with on that process.
Okay, great. So it sounds like both of you have some mixed models here, and from Karen's perspective, and probably Liz's as well, the end-to-end process of management of exam development really resides in-house. Let's go to our next slide now. And Karen, maybe you can start off with this one. What factors led your testing organization to outsource this work?
Sure. As I mentioned just briefly my last comment, we take a look at what type of exam it is when we're looking at whether or not we're going to outsource the work. We deliver 2 different types of tests. We have our proctored, traditional test center exams that are delivered in a secure environment, but then we also have a series of online tests that are geared more towards our sales and service individuals. So the latter is where we really look to outsource those exams and a lot of the development process because of the fact that they are lower stakes exams. Some of the other things that we take into consideration too is, what is the expertise that's available, whether it is with subject matter experts or whether it is psychometric. We take a look at, what sort of impact, are the SMEs, do we have SMEs available? Can we do this in-house? Or does the expertise lie somewhere else and do we need to outsource that piece? And also turnaround time comes into play for us as to what our deadlines are, how quickly we need to get something done. If it's actually, it takes us less time sometimes to actually hold our own item development workshop because we can knock the exam out and develop it and technically review it and ang off it within a 1 week period. So those are the things we consider.
Okay, so kind of three things there, that looking at the type of exam, the expertise of what you have in-house versus externally, and then how quickly something needs to be turned around and delivered. Liz, how about you?
So as I mentioned on the previous slide, we rely heavily on expertise. That's one of the key factors. So the expertise that we do not outsource is the expertise around our core competencies, our core product and technology that we're testing on. So within the certification team, we have the technical people, and within Juniper Networks, we have SMEs, and within our partner organization, we have SMEs. So all of that is, we do not outsource. We keep all of that, actually, that expertise. We do that internally. But we do about 1 exam a month. So our volume is steady, but relatively low if you compare it to like Karen and the HP volume. So there really is not enough volume to justify getting in-house any kind of dedicated psychometric expertise or any kind of very highly complex exam publishing and or exam delivery tools. So that's one key factor, that we don't have enough volume to drive the need to build that talent in-house or that expertise in-house. In addition, when it comes to the psychometrics, I actually think it adds to our legal defensibility and the reliability and quality of the exams if we are working with a third-party consulting firm with no vested interest in our exams or our programs. So what I get from that is a third-party perspective on how we're developing our exams and how we're delivering those exams. So finally, I also like having someone connected to the testing industry, maybe in a slightly different way than we are. So my team's connected to the testing industry, but we're really working within the IT context. By getting a psychometrician as a consultative partner, they can bring to the table the latest and greatest on standards, on new testing techniques, and so they can help ensure that our program has the most relevant and advanced technology or perspective to apply to our exams. So again, as I mentioned, for exam pub and delivery, we are a small team, and so we choose to hand off that entire piece of the business. I don't want to develop those tools or maintain those tools or contract for those tools within my own organization, given the volumes and the staffing that we currently have. So those would be my reasons.
Okay, great. So, I think you bring up an interesting point about legal defensibility and bringing in that third-party expertise to help with the psychometric piece. Let's move to the next slide, and this is kind of related. So, if you're looking for a vendor to outsource, what are some of the qualities that you're looking for? Liz, can I have you start?
Sure. You're ping-ponging back and forth between us.
Yes, I am.
So I have actually, I'm sorry, what?
That's my strategy.
In answering this question, I actually thought hard about this, and I kind of apply I apply levels of qualities, and I have a minimally qualified candidate concept that I apply to all vendors, actually. And for a psychometrician or an exam development partner, I'm looking for reputation and references as a must. So we're a very small community, as you guys probably know on the phone, and so if you don't know the person who's proposing their, actually even exam publishing and exam delivery services to you as well as psychometricians, if you don't know them, somebody else you know in the industry, like I'll call Karen, do you know this guy? So the advantages and disadvantages of a closed community. So reputation and references is a must, and clearly the academic qualifications just have to be there. Once you advance beyond kind of that minimal qualification, I prefer to work with a company that might have multiple resources to help us in exam development, so that if my schedule, if it's only a sole proprietor, our schedules have to sync up for me to be able to move forward on my exam development plan. And sometimes my plans change because of the people that I have to draw into those workshops. So I really like to work with someone who has multiple resources so that it doesn't become a constraining factor in my ability to roll out my development plans. Also, we operate as a partner with our test development consultant. So it's very important how that company or those individuals view their role in our program. So we really need some compatibility and agreement on the overall philosophy and method of exam development and exam delivery in the way that Juniper Networks chooses to do it. Trust is huge because security is huge, and we also look for experts that are willing to share their expertise so that they're consultative with us, so that they're adding value. So when I have conversations with them, they say to me, Liz, have you thought about blah, blah, blah. So those are kind of some of the key criteria. But finally, we want someone who is up to date on the testing industry. So Jamie, you said it earlier, the innovation piece. This is a resource, you know, me and my team, sometimes we can be heads down, holes in the ground, trying to get the next deliverable produced. And we can't always be understanding what the latest and the greatest in the testing industry. So any kind of consultative partner that I would have, and this applies to psychometricians and test delivery partners, I want them to bring that innovation into me and help me with that challenge that I have. Price is the very last consideration, and arguably not even really, I mean, a consideration by the time we get through all of these points. So.
Okay, great. That's quite a laundry list. There's some great criteria there. I hope some of you are taking notes out there. Karen, let me go to you now.
Well, I might just want to say all of the above, and suffice it, since Liz has such a great list there. But I will say that pretty much everything that she listed is very important to us when we're taking a look for the qualities of a particular vendor. Experience, obviously, knowledge in the industry, all of those things really play a role. The only thing that I would add in addition to what Liz has said is that, and she did mention that the security, you know, is obviously critical and important. We take that even a step further too, is we require our vendors and our partners that we work with to actually use the tools that we use in order to really ensure security. We do develop a very large number of exams on an annual basis. It's approximately 100. And so we have to make sure that if they're not leveraging and using the same tools that we are, there's then additional steps and processes in place. In addition to the security aspect also, we're, you know, not transferring files or any of that. And so we need to make sure that they're also willing and can learn and come up to speed on the tools that we are using to make everything happen.
Okay, great. So yeah, that's good information there. All right, so let me, I think you guys came up with a great list of criteria for our listeners to take advantage of. Let me turn to our next slide now, and we're going to turn this over to our listeners and ask them a question. Time for a polling question of what parts of the test development process do you outsource? So Skylar, I'm going to turn this to you.
Okay, Jamie, thank you for the question. What parts of the test development process do you outsource? The options are test blueprinting, item development, cut score setting, test publication, and none. We do it all in-house. We're just waiting for responses. I'll give another 15, 20 seconds. If you haven't had a chance to vote, please do so. I'm going to wrap this up in about 8 or 9 seconds. Okay, Jamie, I've closed the poll. The responses are test blueprinting 10%, item development 17%, cut score setting 21%. Test publication 24%, and then none, we do it all in-house, is 28%.
Wow, that's a little bit surprising, but that's interesting information. Thank you. So let's go back to our panelists now, and the next question for you is, how do you balance the resources to get the best possible results? And Karen, I'll turn this one to you first.
Okay. Well, I take a look at this from two different perspectives. If I look at things internally, the exam managers who are responsible for the overall exam development process are well versed on all of the pieces, within our specific process, but also they're generic enough that they can move from one area to another despite the technology that we're working on. As you can imagine, at Hewlett Packard, we have a wide array of certifications and exams, all the way from, networking to servers to storage and so on down the line. I don't require people to have expertise in those technologies, so I can balance my resources by having them cover areas and help out in certain, when volumes are really high in one specific technology area. From an external approach, I often use one of our vendors as really what I call a relief valve. When our volumes are getting very high, we will turn to them more to manage even additional parts of the process, so we don't, get too overwhelmed. Although at times it's still very high and very overwhelming, but we really do rely on our vendor and our partner to pick up the slack when need be. One of the other things that we see that helps with our process and balancing things is making sure that we have a very large number of subject matter experts to assist in the parts of the process that really do require their expertise. And I'm sure all of you face this dilemma at times where you don't have enough people, and we heavily rely on them for our technical review process, for our ANGOF cut score setting process. And so we actually are in the process of starting up a new project where we're trying to encourage more subject matter expertise and participation, and reaching out to the people who we know we can trust to be part of our development process. So those are the things we look at.
Yeah, three pieces there. One, you've got a group of generalists that can kind of come in and out of projects as you need them. The metaphor of your vendors, your helpers, your outsourcing being kind of a release valve, and then really that critical piece of SMEs, making sure you've got enough of them so that they really can contribute at many different levels to the test development process. Liz, what are your thoughts here?
Excuse me. So as it applies to outsourcing, and I think I've said this a little bit previously, but we leverage the individual's expertise. So at Juniper Networks, we are the experts in networking and running a business and running a global certification program. My team definitely has some testing expertise, but they're mostly as it functions within an IT company. And half the team learned that on the job. They came to this job as technical experts, so they're subject matter experts in and of themselves. And their primary responsibility is to ensure kind of that Juniper Networks IT industry expertise within the certification team. So I leverage experts and tools that have that meet our requirements that are outside that kind of core competency. So again, we leverage experts in psychometrics, and then vendors with test publication and test delivery tools and services that we don't want to build in-house, so we want to keep our team small.
Okay. So again, bringing in figuring out where that expertise is and determining if it needs to be internal or external. Let's go to the next slide and talk about the impact of having a worldwide program on your ability to outsource talent. What are some of the considerations that you look like in running a worldwide program and using outsourcing? Liz, can you start on this one?
Yeah, sure, sorry. So the global nature of our program doesn't really have an impact on our decision to outsource or not outsource. The stuff that we do outsource is all done here in the U.S., so we don't work with any test development partners outside of the U.S. And frankly, most of our exam development is done here in the U.S. Not all of it, but most of it. And then our test delivery partner is, although a global company, again, U.S.-based. So, and that doesn't hinder the global nature of our program, except, you know, in a somewhat unrelated facet, which is, you know, it's very U.S.-centric, and English is your first language, is your native language. So we need to be very, very careful to make sure that we build into our programs, into our exams, into our services, the global nature of the program, and the fact that probably 2/3 of our candidates do not speak English as native speakers. So that does take time, thought, and expertise to ensure English as a second language is built in, because none of our exams are actually localized. So.
Okay, good. So kind of keeping in mind this global audience as you go about developing and deploying exams. Karen, how about you?
Yeah, we actually take pretty much the same approach as Liz at Juniper does, and we don't outsource. All of our outsourced work really is U.S.-based. We do actually have one company that we work with in Germany that does more specific test development of the questions, but as far as other parts of the process that is kept, you know, within the U.S., we have found that is it really works for us as far as, you know, when we're developing the questions and reviewing them and editing and those types of parts and building the assessments themselves. But, you know, we are also, of course, a worldwide program, and we need to consider that with every step we take in the process. We do try to involve our subject matter experts across the world, which, as you know, is very challenging with all the different time zones, but making sure that we're getting feedback on not only the questions and whether they're clear and concise and whether they will potentially translate well, and also whether or not some of the products are actually sold in those countries. And we run into that issue because we do have such an enormous variety in products and services that they aren't always worldwide. So we're very careful when we involve people in the process, but we do translate our exams, not all of them, but a good portion of them, and we translate them into many languages. So we do try to instill early in the process certain good principles in the item writing area to make sure that they eventually will translate well when we get to that part at the very end.
Okay, good. So again, keeping in mind your global audience as you work through the test development process, and in particular, you know, if exams are going to be translated and figuring out if actually, you know, what products are being sold in those countries. So it's kind of keeping that global approach in mind. Let's move now to our next slide, and it's time for audience participation again. And our question is, do you globally source talent? So, Skylar, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so the question is, do you globally source talent, meaning do you offshore or for some or all of your test development outsourcing needs? And the options are just a simple yes, no. So we'll wait maybe 20 seconds or so for responses. Shouldn't take very long. Looks like about 2/3 of our attendees have voted. We'll wait another 10 seconds or so. You globally source talent. Okay, I think we're almost there. 3 more seconds. Okay, the results are 24% say yes, they globally source talent. 76% say no.
Okay, interesting. So it looks like most people, if they are doing, for those of the folks that do outsourcing, they're keeping it mainly within the United States. I've got one more question for our panelists, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So let's go to the next slide. And last question, who did I leave off with? Karen, is it your turn to start? If a testing colleague asks you, what is the first thing I should consider outsourcing? What would you tell them?
I would say it depends. Actually, I would probably, it depends, and the reason I say that is because really it depends on the size of your program. You know, if you do have a small program and, you know, it doesn't make sense to bring some of those psychometric services, or at least, you know, that knowledge in-house to a certain point. If you have a very large program, then, you know, you may want to consider outsourcing other parts of the process that are going to ease the pain a little bit with respect to the cumbersome tasks that really, you know, do take a lot of time and effort. So unfortunately, I'm going to kind of give you two answers, and, you know, you can pick or choose.
Okay. All right. So it kind of depends on the size of the program and where the pain is in the organization. Liz, how about you?
So my answer is somewhat similar to Karen's. In my previous company, where I ran the certification program, it was actually quite a large program, and we had our own psychometrics in-house because we were large, and we did an exam a week as opposed to an exam a month, and so could sustain a staff of people with that expertise. So, but if you were a smaller program like Juniper Networks and you were doing only one exam a month, definitely psychometrics would be the first headache I'd want off my plate, if you will, so that I could take those, so I could just put all that off to someone else and invest my efforts in more concentrated areas around our core competencies. And then obviously, Jamie, you didn't ask about just test development here, so I would say the other obvious thing to outsource is your test delivery. That's a big one.
Okay.
Although that's changing a bit in the industry, which is interesting.
Do you want to comment on that some more?
That's a whole nother topic, Jamie. Let's do another webinar around that.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think
I'm not sure that's what everybody here came to hear.
Yeah, that's true. That's an interesting comment, though. Okay. So again, kind of outsourcing those things that kind of relating back to the comments you guys made about expertise and whether or not you have that, want to have that core competency, whether or not that's a core competency for you or should be outsourced. Let's open the chat lines. I should say chat lines. Open the well, you can type in questions now. But what questions do you have for our presenters? And I will let Skylar manage this.
Jamie, I think you've done such a great job of presenting that we really don't have a lot of questions entered so far. So I'm saying now to our audience, if you do have a question for any of the presenters or any of the content that's been discussed, please type it into the question box and we'll try to get that answered. I do have one from earlier when we were talking about outsourcing test development talent. I have one question that says, please clarify what you mean by tools.
I can clarify. I think I was the tools person. So
I believe it was you, yeah.
Yep. When I refer to tools, we actually leverage a couple of different tools during our process. One is the actual item development tool where either our subject matter experts or whether the exam managers or our partner, or whomever is actually writing the questions into the tool. We also use this particular tool to create the actual test itself to get it ready for publication and then development. We also have an additional tool that we use for the Angoff cut score setting process and also balancing our test forms. And we also do leverage that for technical reviews and conducting those, during phone calls.
Thank you. I had another, I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment. I think it's a question, came in from the same attendee as you were giving that explanation. It said, how to ensure security when outsourcing, publishing, and delivery.
Liz, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I think that references the fact that we actually choose at Juniper Networks, we look for our vendors to bring tools to us and minimize the number of tools we have in-house. So completely opposite of what Karen's described on HP. And that's primarily, again, due to the difference in size of the program. So for example, I don't have an in-house item banking tool. I don't own my own item banking tool. All of my items are contained in the tool of our test development partner. And how do I ensure security? It goes back to those criteria that I had, that laundry list that I had when picking my test development partner. They have a vested interest in securing, not only do they have a vested interest because they're in the business to do this, they have a vested interest in securing my content. They also, this particular organization that I work with, has it's just in their DNA, if you will, it's just in the way they conduct their business that test items should be secure. You know, conversations around people stealing test items just will send this organization, the people in this organization, through the roof. So how do I ensure security? I ensure security by the partner that I choose to work with, within the partners and the technologies that are available to me. So the test development partner, I have a lot of flexibility with. They keep all my items, and I sleep very well at night knowing that they're quite secure. The test delivery environment, some of you may know, is particularly for IT companies or companies that need a global network, is a little bit of a different animal, because when you're delivering your exams through 5,000 testing centers, there's only so much control you can have over people being able to access your items. So that's, as everybody knows, a major headache for all of us. And that's part of what I was referring to, Jamie, in terms of kind of the changing market. There's a lot of changes that are happening in test delivery to try to increase the test sponsor's ability to secure our items and keep them safe. I think Karen at HP has implemented one of those different technologies in how she delivers exams, and you know, the remote proctoring. So all of that is quite exciting and something that I'm watching very closely. But that is definitely an issue when you hand your items off to someone who's going to deliver them globally for you through 5,000 testing centers.
Great.
Thank you very much. I do have another question here, unless you had some comments.
Please go. Go ahead.
Okay. The question is, have you ever conducted a virtual item writing or IDG meeting? If yes, what are the pros and cons of doing this?
Don't do it.
Yes. Oh. Karen, I'm going to let you field.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. We've tried, you know, pretty much every approach possible to cut costs and, you know, keep security and these types of things. I will tell you, one of the most difficult, painful processes we've ever tried is trying to do a virtual remote development process. You know, we've sliced and diced it in different ways. We get people on a, you know, call to start with, set them off for a few hours on their own, come back together. We've given them assignments ahead of time. It is really, really difficult and challenging. And if anybody has perfected that, I would love to know it myself.
Yeah, and Jamie, we're often forced to do it, if you will, for business reasons, budgeting. And so I've done it on occasion, but it's always my last resort and comes with great qualifications and expectation setting. And I have never seen the quality of product come out of a remote workshop as I see when you do a everybody in the room workshop. So it's a tool like any other tool. It has benefits in terms of cost, and sometimes can get you more SMEs in the room, more SMEs helping out in the process. But I would say that in the long run, it comes at a greater cost, which is longer time to market and lower quality of exam.
Yeah.
Thank you. I do have another question. I believe it's directed at Karen. It says, Karen mentioned she outsourced round 1 review. What is involved in the round 1 review?
Round one review for us is essentially a basic editorial review and also a high-level psychometric review. And so what we're looking for our, the organization that we work with to do here is, make sure that, the questions are, clear, concise, are the distractors, is one standing out versus the other? Are there cues in the, in the distractors or the answer options to give them away? Some of those very basic areas that you want to catch first before you actually, so you can bring it to the attention of our SMEs during the tech review of the questions themselves. We find it goes a lot faster if the question is clean and has, brought those things out so we can discuss them and fix them quickly.
Thank you. I have another question here. It's sort of a two-part, and it says, do you outsource the development of your cut score? And if so, what factors led you to do so? And then the other part to it is, if you do not, what are the advantages of developing cut scores in-house?
So, well, this is Liz. I'll jump in, Jamie, because I think you've got one of us to respond to each one of those. I outsource the development of the cut score. We use the Angoff process. And it is done, the cut score is set at the end of the workshop by the SMEs in the room who help develop the exam. And the analysis and facilitating process is done by our psychometrician. And I outsource it again because it requires, in my mind, an in-depth understanding of psychometrics, a lot of experience doing Angoff on a regular basis in a bunch of different environments. So I want someone with a deep expertise because that's such a critical component of the exam. And it's not, again, one of the Juniper Network's core competencies, so we outsource it.
And we keep it in-house, as I mentioned previously. My exam managers are essentially trained on the process and, know the psychometrics enough that they can manage it, they can work it, and then as I mentioned, also we use a tool to help us actually take it a step further and balance forms and complete that last step of the process so it's not manual. We previously had used a different method in manually balancing forms based on the scores, and it was, I will say, tedious and painful, and I'm sure my team was, not too happy about the amount of time that it took.
Thank you. I have another question here more related to security. And it says, how do you identify whether security of the exam has been compromised or not in a particular location?
Google.
We actually, at Juniper Networks, we've built in 2 different types of fraud detection questions into all of our exams. And those questions perform and they help us identify different things, but one aspect of our technique allows us to identify through some analysis with a high degree of confidence exactly where and when the exam was stolen. It also helps us identify people who've used answer keys and questions to prepare for their exam, who've had prior access to that exam content. So we use it for our exam security enforcement, but we can also use these techniques to identify with a pretty high degree of accuracy where and when exams have been stolen. It's really very, very useful.
Karen, would you like to comment on that?
We leverage some of the things that Liz does also. It sounds like I need to chat with her a little bit more on some of the other things that they're doing. But yeah, we become aware originally just by Google alerts and some of those things. It's pretty easy to, patrol yourself and set these up so you can, see when an exam has been exposed. And at that point, then, we know. We also have some ways of identifying whether or not candidates have been using those online copies to take the tests. And we have an analytics group that actually crunches some statistics and numbers for us to narrow down some of these people so we can further address them.
Okay,
so I have another question. If that's all for that, I have another question. It says, at any point you have a mix of internal and external subject matter experts working on the same thing, like item development or approving the blueprint, for example?
I can take that if you want, and we always have a mix of people. It is really critical for us to make sure that we represent every audience that our exams are targeted for, and we have we not only certify our internal audience, but our external partners, our customers, and so we really have a broad array of people that take the tests. So we make sure that all the way from our competency modeling through the exam development and review process, that we have a good, strong mix of all of those different audiences represented.
And I would say exactly the same, with only one slight modification. We have one of our core exams, our first entry-level exam, the associate level exam, is pretty basic networking Juniper OS knowledge, and that exam we can develop with just local SME, with just people within our curriculum development group and our certification group. And so that exam we pretty much do just with internals to our education services organization. Everything else, I agree completely with what Karen says. It's important to get people performing that job role in multiple different ways and organizations.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions?
We do have, I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll post the rest of them to our Caveon Test Security LinkedIn group, where you ladies can go on there and answer them as well and have comments. Here's another question that I have that's interesting. It says, what is the rationale behind doing Enghoff method of scoring and not doing beta tests on large programs? In parentheses, it says where you can get enough candidates for beta tests.
Well, since I'm the large program, I'll take that question. And you would be surprised at how few candidates you can actually get for beta testing. Although you would think that would be the case, this is something we struggled with for years. And when I first started with the program, we were doing beta testing, and it could take us up to several months, if not longer, to at least get 50 candidates. And so to be statistically sound, you're looking for at least 100 candidates. And we found that it delayed our process to the point where by the time we were able to actually launch an exam, that it practically, some of the technology changes very quickly. And so we were now looking at potential questions that were irrelevant, and it was really slowing us down. And so our approach is to set the cut score using the Enghoff, and then after, when we have enough live statistics, to start taking a look at that and doing an in-service analysis on, are we in the right spot? How are the questions performing? We now have the ability to actually change out our exams pretty much on the fly if we need to. And so within a few hours, if I really needed to, I could, go in and change out questions or swap them if need be, So we have more flexibility to do that now, and so the in-service analysis becomes important.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Those great questions. And equally, thank you to Liz and Karen for the great responses. There's a lot of different parts of the test development process, and we want to let you know that Caveon works in all of those different parts, and if you need any help, let us know. We're here to help with that process, lend a helping hand. Just to wrap up real quickly, if we, as Skylar mentioned, to continue the conversation, go ahead and you can follow us on Twitter for any updates for events. Skylar mentioned also joining our group on LinkedIn, Caveon Test Security, and where you can still post questions, and we will have both Liz and Karen try to answer those questions for us today. lastly, the slides for this webinar as well as our past webinars are up on our website under resources webinars. So the full recordings will be there, which is great. The other thing I'd like to invite you to, I forgot to mention, was my blog that's coming out this Friday. It's called What If They Made Test Development an Olympic Sport? So I'm going to invite you to read that, and if I'm going to make this available only to this group, that if you do submit a comment, and you'll know what I mean by a comment, a particular kind of comment, that the best response to my question out there, I'm going to send them a $5 Starbucks card. I know, coveted prize. So go ahead and read that and respond to that. And lastly, our next upcoming webinar will be in August, and John Freemer is going to present the basics, test security blocking and tackling for smaller programs. We usually kind of take a hiatus over the summer just because a lot of people are on vacation, and so the next one will be August 22nd. Thank you so much for attending today. A gracious thank you to Liz Burns and Karen Petrini for your participation and your expertise. I think our participants today just got some valuable nuggets of information and hopefully things that they can take back and use in their own programs. Thank you.